God states the truth, yet, with their heads harder than iron, evolutionists still teach their absurd fairy tale.
The frog could now hear, and guess what? Evolution also created sound. Eventually, frogs evolved into lizards and then into chickens, then pigs, dogs, and finally into monkeys. How these animals reproduce without a male and female gender and sexual maturity in both the male and female is hard to explain, but it is theorized that one day an effeminate dog who liked to polish his nails and work out to aerobic tapes suddenly turned into a female. So now the dogs were able to reproduce. And of course, eventually, effeminate pigs, cross-dressing roosters, and sissy monkeys got into the act. It was really cosmopolitan. Then you might find this a bit hard to believe, but you have to be a scientific thinker. Remember, this happened over 45.821776924 million years ago. And don't forget, it is science. The monkey turned into a man. It was really, really, really cool.
On the other hand, the Word of God states, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." The Word of God states the truth, yet, with their heads harder than iron, evolutionists still teach their absurd fairy tale.
The man could walk and talk and a bunch of other stuff. You see, man taught itself to walk by repeatedly listening to Frankie Valli's song, "Walk Like a Man." And of course, it taught itself to talk by reciting old Charlie Darwin lectures. That is why early man are considered one of the most confused population groups in history. It was amazing the way man became alive. Not only did man have life, but they and all life would die. Why life and why death, you might ask? Oh, no reason. Life and death just happened. The living part was fun, death was kind of depressing, but hey, let's not be unfashionable about it. And of course, it is science. Well, that's how it happened. And one day, man is going to evolve into something even better. We don't know what just yet. We have to be patient and wait between 75 days and 75 million years for the Big Bang and evolution to let us know. And everybody will live happily ever after. The end. The evolution theory is so absurd that it would actually be the basis of a good comedy if it wasn't for the fact that public school teachers, government-funded scientists, and the media tout evolution as irrefutable fact. At the same time, they treat religion as comfort for the weak-minded. It is hard to measure the enormous damage inflicted by the theory of evolution. Today, children are brainwashed into believing a baseless, outrageous lie called evolution, which audaciously proclaims that time plus chance plus nothing equals everything. What evolution really teaches. In 1988, during the Cold War against the Soviet Union, United States President Ronald Reagan made a speech in Moscow that was broadcast to the Russian people.
In 1988, Ronald Reagan made a speech in Moscow that was broadcast to the Russian people. Reagan said that when he was faced with an atheist, he was tempted to invite him to the greatest gourmet dinner one could ever serve. And when they finished that dinner, to ask him if he believes there's a cook. Can you imagine enjoying a delicious gourmet meal and someone trying to tell you that there is no cook? It happens every day in our schools. Children are taught that everything in nature evolved from nothing, that there was and is no creator.
President Reagan proposed an interesting question. After eating that gourmet dinner, could anyone believe there was no cook? Certainly not. The point President Reagan made to the Russian people, so simply yet so powerfully, was that evolution asked us to believe an infinitely bigger lie, that there is no God. Throughout his life and presidency, President Reagan understood the ills of communism, calling the Soviet Union an evil empire. He knew that the Russian people had been indoctrinated into atheism by the outlawing of Christianity, the promotion of Marxism, and their government's compulsory teaching of evolution.
I've been collecting stories that are told in the Soviet Union by their people among themselves, which reveal they've got a great sense of humor, but they've also got a pretty cynical attitude toward their system. And I told this one, Bill, you'll have to hear it again. I told it in the car. I didn't tell this one to Gorbachev. You know, there's a 10-year delay in the Soviet Union of delivery of an automobile. And only 1 out of 7 families in the Soviet Union own automobiles. There's a 10-year wait. And you go through quite a process when you're ready to buy, and then you put up the money in advance. And this happened to a fellow, and this is their story that they tell, this joke. That this man, he laid down his money, and then the fellow that was in charge said to him, okay, come back in 10 years and get your car. And he said, morning or afternoon? And the fellow behind the counter said, well, 10 years from now, what difference does it make? And he said, well, the plumber's coming in the morning.
Leon Trotsky, one of the early leaders of the communist regime, wrote,
"The idea of evolution and determinism took possession of me completely. Darwin stood for me like a mighty doorkeeper at the entrance to the temple of the universe. I was intoxicated with his thought."
The lesson learned, but seldom heeded, even today, is that no government or person can break the laws of God without being broken on them. When a nation or an individual lifts up anything, whether it's a philosophy, a theory, a government, a worldly pursuit, a pleasure, or a person above God, this is idolatry. Those who put their faith in evolution instead of God are therefore committing idolatry. The theory of evolution for them is more than a scientific hypothesis, but the foundation for their belief in a false religion.
Supreme Court Justice Scalia wrote, "Belief in evolution is a central tenet of the religion of secular humanism."
Kids get off to Sunday school all right? Well, it's a beautiful day. As they get back from Sunday school, why don't we all pile into the car and go over... Hey, what is this? Someone going on a trip?
You could call it a trip. Actually, the children are going away to a state school.
Now, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. I don't know what's happened to you or what they've done to change you, but you're not going to send these kids away.
Oh, she's not sending us away. It was our idea. We learned in school that home life does not encourage the growth of the collective character which the party wishes to develop in its young people. It's your fault. You should have spent more time training us to think along party lines. As a member of the Young Pioneers, it will be my duty to report you.
Now, you better listen to me. All of you. I don't want to hear any more talk about state schools and party lines and collective character and deviationism. This is going to be a family again, and I know just where to start. You two are going to Sunday school, and you're going right now.
Mommy, tell us!
No use to argue.
Mom!
This time, I'm going to overrule the party. Come on.
Dad!
They've been poisoning you kids with those lies long enough. Now you're really going to find out what the truth is all about.
We tried to tell you, Dad.